Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 2019 in Review and What to Expect for 2020. My name is Barrett Wamers. I'm going to be your host today, and our presenter is Ben Ray. We're really excited about today's topic. This is something, one of the webinars we love to do because it allows us to go back in time and see everything that we did this past year, as well as really get excited for what we're doing in 2020 and to get some feedback to hear from you, our customers, on what you want to see, as well as if there's things that are important to you that we don't have in our timeline or haven't thought of yet. So before we actually jump into the content, I always like to go over the GoToWebinar control panel, especially if this is your first time joining us in one of these webinars. You'll notice we have an arrow at the top of the control panel. This allows you to hide or collapse the panel. A lot of times I'll just collapse it to the side and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. By default, everyone's microphone is on mute. If you want audio rights at any time, there is a button where you can raise your hand, and if I see that, I'll give you the audio rights. Before I actually give you the audio rights, I'll make sure that you meant to press that button. And I'll do that through our chat and our question area. So another great section of the control panel is our questions. So if at any time you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if I think they're really important for everyone else on the webinar, I'll go ahead and bring it up to Ben as well. And before I hand this over, I do want to go through some announcements that we have within iFormBuilder. Our next certification, our FORMBUILDER certification, is February 18th and 18th through the 21st. If you'd like to sign up or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, as well as share this link with you. The last announcement we have is that our classic form builder is going to be removed from the platform. So if you are one of the few individuals still using the classic form builder, please keep in mind that we are planning on removing it. So you should start using the most recent version of our form builder as soon as possible. If you're not sure if people in your company are still using it, you can reach out to us and we'll be able to let you know. And then we'll just deactivate it for your account if you want to make sure that they don't even see the button for the classic form builder anymore. With that, I'm really excited to go ahead and hand the roles over to Ben. And Ben, it's your show now.
All right, thanks, Barrett. Really excited to be here today, and it's good to always meet up every couple months and kind of show where we've been. And at this point in time, I mean, definitely, we worked a lot in 2019 with things. We're really excited to share, what's going on in 2020. So before we get started, we just want to do a quick poll. Are you a current iFormBuilder user? If you could just fill that out, that would give us, some idea of who all we have on the call here today.
Thank you, Ben. And just as some of these votes come in, it does look like we have pretty two answers that are common. One is yes, they have an active iFormBuilder plan, and another representation we have is individuals who are just here to check things out and to learn a little bit more about iFormBuilder and the platform as a whole. So with that, Ben, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll.
Okay, good to know. It looks like we have 84% of people who do have an active iFormBuilder plan. Sounds like we have a dog in the background that sounds like he has an active plan as well. And a couple folks that are here to check things out. So welcome everyone. Welcome. So I just wanted to go over a quick agenda here before we get started. First and foremost, we want to talk about what we did in 2019. Our team worked on a lot of different things. If you're following our release notes or other communications, you may have seen a number of things we worked on. One of the big things that we are working on currently that was the most requested by our users is our new user management application. I'm going to go ahead and demo that and share a preview of kind of what that's going to look like as folks are going to be able to start getting access to that in early 2020. And then towards the end here, we want to look into kind of what we're working on in the future. In 2020, we have a lot of big plans we'd like to go over with you. These are a lot of different community feature requests and other things that we're working on that we really believe can make iFormBuilder and Zerion a better product. So first, we wanted to start out with our form builder. So in 2019, we worked on our form builder. It's been out for a couple years now, but we worked on some UI improvements to that. So first item you'll see here is if you are creating forms or editing forms, the form properties section at the beginning of 2019 was a bit outdated. So we worked on this in early 2019, trying to give it a new, refreshed interface. So you're going to see we have a basic and advanced view. Before, this was just one long drop down, and a lot of the advanced things most users didn't utilize, so it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to have it in one section there. So we actually split it up into two sections, one for basic and one for advanced. So all the standard things that you want to do with a form, like the form label, the form names, and the form icons, we put those into the basic section, and then in the advanced section we put some more of the display or the reference IDs and the dynamic attributes that I'll go over here in just a minute. One of the key things I wanted to point out here is our form icon section. Typically you have to either use a Dropbox or a box icon, which takes some time to figure out the syntax, and it's kind of a pain to configure. So we've allowed you to upload custom icons for this form there. So if you have any icons that are on your computer, you can just simply upload those into there. It makes that management much easier, and you can reuse those icons across multiple forms. So this has been pretty beneficial, for our team working with customers, and more importantly for folks using the application day in and day out. Continuing on the form builder side of things, we've added this thing called dynamic attributes, and actually I'll jump back a second here. So we have these. We currently have reference IDs, right? And reference IDs were able to do certain things like, show a form only between the hours of 9 and 5, show different items in your display field, and other custom configurations. But we wanted a way that this can scale. I mean, this is a little harder to implement from an end user standpoint. So we've introduced this thing called dynamic attributes. These can be applied at the form level or at the element level. So at the form level, we have a couple here. Update assigned records. So if you have a record on your device and someone makes changes at the admin level, they can assign that record back out to the field, and it's going to overwrite or update that record depending on what state it's in. And some other things here, we can disable a delete records button on the device. We allowed, this year on the mobile side, we allow people to delete records in bulk on the device. Some folks did not want to have that, so we have an option to turn that on. We are going to be adding more and more different dynamic attributes as folks have custom requests that can be enabled at the form level or the element level, as I'm going to go over here now. So at the element level, the dynamic attributes are really the same concept, just a little bit different. They're applied at the time element, the date time element, and the lookup element. So for the time and date time element, maybe you want to set up a 12 or a 24-hour time. So you can do that in here by simply saying, I want to set it to show always as 12-hour time or always as 24-hour time. This down here is just a little drop down that you can select. So this makes things definitely easier, and this is something we didn't have before, because by default the time or the date time element shows what your mobile device is set to. If it's set to military time, 24-hour, or to the 12-hour time. On the lookup element, we have a couple dynamic attributes that I'm going to go over here in just a minute when we hop into the lookup element. We've also added a variety of different built-in functions. These have been helpful for customers to do a variety of different things, a lot of it on the integration side, some of it on the capturing of location information, and then some troubleshooting and debugging pieces here. So you see we have things like the server name, user ID, profile ID. These things are all helpful for integrations, as when the record's sent to either data flow or to someone's custom service that they may have, they can actually customize a variety of different things based off of that. Same thing, we have the form name, form label. You can simply start putting these inside your forms, and this will be captured with all your other metadata. So a lot of folks, we really recommend that you actually use this as as your different dynamic values and your metadata there. On the location element side, we have a couple pretty neat use cases here. By default, you can use iFormBuilder.location.string, and what that's going to do is that's going to populate the location element when you open up the form or upon any different conditions that you have. So let's say when someone signs off on a signature element, you want to populate the location element to make sure that where they signed it at they're actually on the job site and not, in a fast food restaurant or at their house. That can, really make sure that the data is accurate and captured where you want it to be. All these other ones, latitude, longitude, altitude, speed, and so on, all these can be populated at any time as well. And this can be helpful for, some of the reasons I mentioned, and I'm sure, folks can think of other use cases for this as well. So these are a couple built-in functions. I'm sure we're going to be adding more in 2020 as well, so stay tuned for that. But this is the extensive list that we've added this year. So I want to just hop into some interesting stats. At the beginning of the webinar, Barrett talked about our classic form builder. We have about 4% of our customers left still using that. If you have not been introduced to our new form builder, we'll obviously share some documentation and things after the call. But there's a variety of new ways to do different things, and really we've made this so it can be faster and better for a user experience side. And from a searching standpoint, you can search and find your forms. These are things that we're definitely a pain in the old builder. So if you are still using that, definitely would recommend you try out the new one. And we want to be at 100% here in the next couple months on the new form builder. So thanks for all the support and feedback we've gotten to make this a reality. So I wanted to transition next to the mobile side of things. We've been busy doing a number of different things. First here, I wanted to mention our new lookup element that we've added. So I think it's been probably 2 years since we've added a lookup element or added a new element to the form. I think the last one was maybe a timer or a counter. But with that said, we have added a new element to the form. This came from a variety of customers having some challenges with our existing lookup element. So this is our new lookup element here. On the right-hand side, here's how it would behave on your iOS or Android device. You would see 5 different columns, up to 5 different columns of information. Our previous Smart Table search would only have have 1 column of information here, which gets the job done, but it's also helpful to see details in this case like the site name, the site address, the site manager, and the phone on here. We may expand this to more columns in the future, but 5 made sense for some of these smaller devices out there. So you can do a couple things with this lookup element, a couple dynamic attributes that I'm talking about here. So one of the important ones is read only. Maybe this is a employee contact list. You don't want to actually capture any information with this, but you want to use this element as reference information for folks. So you could simply turn on this read only flag, and when you open up the lookup element, what it's really going to do is it's going to not let you select anything. You can look through here and see all this information as you wish. Maybe you need a phone number to get a hold of someone or something like that. You can use the read only attribute for that. We have a max element or a max attribute here that's going to let us say, let's only show 10 records max in here. So this worked really well when paired with our filter below. So maybe you want to say, show me everything in region A as this filter is showing. And based on region A, I want to show only the top 10 rows in region A. You could do that by using a filter and a max. And we also have a sort, which is not pictured here, but you can actually sort it and say, sort alphabetically by site name, just from an organization standpoint. So we put a lot of hard work into this. This has been out on iOS and Android for a couple months now, and we're working on it to add in 2020 on the WebForm side of things. Is there any questions so far here? I don't know if this is a good time for a quick break.
Yep, and there are. I was just reading through some of it. So there's a question about using the lookup element for about 2,700 records. Is there a limitation for the record size?
Great question. So no, we did not enforce any limitation for the record or for the amount of records. So 2,700 records does not seem like a whole lot. It really depends on how many columns you want to utilize as well for that. Our main rule of thumb here is you want to test on the least powerful device that you have to make sure that it's going to behave correctly there. Now, if you're talking about something like 50,000 or 100,000 records, there's definitely going to be some more performance impact. You may even have it at 2,700 records, depending upon what all filters and sorts that you're doing on here. But we did not enforce a limit, so it's definitely want to test and make sure that it works on the least powerful device you have.
So I misread that question. It was actually 27,000. So I
27.
think what you're saying would probably stick to what they're asking. I mean, you are going to run into some issues as far as performance when you have such a large size records.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I can't reiterate enough. Definitely test to make sure it it works well there. And if you do hit any challenges, let us know. We can maybe look to see how we can optimize that a little more. So
Now,
great.
with a follow-up question, with that, with the smart table search, it was the idea that all the records would sync that initial time, and then after, it wouldn't sync every time you sync the device. It would only download new records. Can they expect the same sort of behavior with the lookup element?
Yeah, great question. Yes, yes, you can absolutely. So it's going to behave the same way. It actually does use the same records that are downloaded from Smart Table Search as well. So again, if there's any updates, new records added, or even deletions, we support all of those.
Perfect. Okay. That's it for now, and I'll let you know if any other questions come in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barrett. So moving on, something we put in a lot of effort into really making the user experience a little better and the user interface here. So if you're not familiar with this, if you haven't gotten our latest app, definitely download it and take a look at this. We did this in probably the middle of 2019. Basically, we did not even have this bottom bar at all here. We had the plus button up here and the map button up here as well, so you could switch back and forth. We really wanted to standardize this across iOS and Android and introduce a new option to delete records, either single records or bulk records in this case. So we did move this screen around a little bit. We put the plus button a little more prominent here in the middle, and we had added the delete button here where you can hit this and you can say, I want to delete what I've selected, or what I have, if I want to delete all records, and you can still switch between the the map and list view. So those were two of the big things we added. We expect some more user interface and user experience updates here coming in 2020 as well. We have added a new function I wanted to showcase here. This has been really beneficial for customers implementing different types of scoring and different types of counting functions. So we've implemented a new function called iFormBuilder.option.count. The whole point of this function is to count the number of times a specific option has been selected within a form. A lot of forms we see, they have pass, fail, NA, or compliant, non-compliant. And you may have 100 questions on your form like that, or throughout many subforms have a variety of different questions like that. And if you want to count the number of times, in this case, something failed, you have to go into a dynamic value and write a pretty complex dynamic value statement to count that, even add some helper fields. Some of you that have scored or have implemented scoring in the form through our documentation may have seen that and see how tedious it is. So really what we've implemented is a new function that you can pass in just 2 parameters at a minimum, and you'll be able to count the number of times something has failed. So in this case, I call iFormBuilder.option.count, and I pass in 2 parameters. First is the option list ID that is utilized for each of these select elements. So if you would simply select on this select element, you could see that, that here's the option list ID. And then the second parameter is the key value of the option you want to count. So in this case, the key value is fail, all lowercase. The label is fail, all uppercase. So all I do is put that in there, and as I fill out this form, I said pass, fail, fail. It's going to count 2 failures. Now the big benefit is you can go in and you can add 50 more questions in here, and you don't have to change your dynamic value at all, which makes it very nice. If you were to add 50 more questions, previously, you'd have to score all those separately, and you'd have a heck of a long dynamic value statement. So this has been really beneficial. This can be used for pick list elements, select elements, as well as multi-select elements to count the number of times a option has been selected. So we're really excited to see how folks can put this to use. I know I've personally used it on some forms I've been working on for some customers implementing scoring, and it's saved me a heck of a lot of time, and hope it can for everyone else.
Hey Ben, before you go on, there's a question that came in about this, and just bear with me as I read through it. Says with the count, is there a way to utilize that to count how many times a particular question has been changed? For example, question 1, they select yes, then no, then select yes again, that it updates the count to 3. So, if they've changed their response while they're actually in the form, is it counting that, or is it only counting the end result?
It is only counting the end result. That's a good question, something we really haven't thought about a whole lot. But I believe if you work with a certain dynamic value, I bet you could accomplish something like that. So definitely would be interested to talk about that and see how we can make that happen. But no, it does not. It just counts the end result.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So I mentioned, if you were on our previous webinar we did in August on what we did in 2019, we did implement our mobile beta program. I went over it then. I'm going over it again now because we really do believe it's going to be a game changer for customers. So we implemented this mobile beta program so folks can have early access to features. So that's on the iOS and on the Android side. We put our app into beta for 2 or 3 weeks before we actually release it to the world. So this way, like the iFormBuilder.option.count, you could go ahead, download our new beta app, and test out that function in your forms before it goes to the rest of your users. In addition to just testing the new functionality, you can also test to see my form's going to still behave the same. There are some UI changes that sometimes we make, or other types of changes. We do our best to ensure we don't make any unforeseen changes in there, but sometimes it does certainly happen. So just in this year, I know folks have used it and they've reported some issues early before it goes out to the rest of the world, which has helped us, as well as helping folks kind of see some of these new features and functionality. So we'll definitely encourage everyone, if you are not on that, to maybe get an administrator or two from your account or whoever manages the forms to sign up for that, and make sure that your forms forms work as they did before, and more importantly, you can see some of the new stuff we're doing. And see how you can build it into your workflows. So I wanted to share some mobile stats. When we released iFormBuilder, it was only an iOS application. Back in the day, in 2008 or so. Now at this point, once we introduced Android, Android usage has been steadily growing. As we can see, still iOS is about 70% of our user base. Android is the other 30%. So just interesting to see see how folks are using it. I believe the iOS comes from just the standardization of a lot of the devices, and the Android side is steadily growing, which is great to see. So I wanted to talk quickly here about WebForms, and then we can look at moving into a quick demo of the application. So on the WebForms side, we released WebForms in late 2018. So for some time now, it's been definitely taking off, and I'll showcase some of the usage on where it's at now across customers. But we've worked on a couple things to really bring it up to speed with iOS and Android. One of the biggest things we did, it's at the bottom of this list here, but was we got it out of beta. We introduced things like Smart Table Search. So now that functionality works, pretty much the same as it did in iOS and Android. We implemented different element descriptions. So in this case, when I hover over my text field, for example, it's going to show the description right beside here. This can be helpful for when I'm typing in the site name or selecting the site name. Now I know what actually to do. This did exist on iOS and Android, but it didn't exist on WebForms until we added it recently. We have allowed, one of the biggest complaints we got with WebForms was that it works great and everything, but the issue is it takes some time to load the forms. By nature of being a web-based form, every time we open it, it's going to download all the assets that the form needs, and it's going to take some time. That's just kind of how it works there. So what we did was we figured out a way to actually return or currently store some of that information locally. So we would store the form structure, some lookup records and things locally. So then every time you load the form, it loads really, really fast, just in a second or two, as opposed to downloading everything and maybe taking upwards of a couple minutes. So if you actually click the eye icon in the top right here, you can simply tap Keep Data on Browser. And what this is going to do is it's going to retain that information as long as you don't clear your cache or move to a new computer and stuff like that. This option is best for personal computers. If you're on a public computer and using it, you probably you don't want to turn that on. But that's been definitely a game changer for folks in filling out forms, because they can do it faster and they don't have to wait every time for it to load. We've also added a number of page level reference IDs, like page type time aware that I'm talking about, forms available only between 9 and 12, or a single submission for a form. Really, this was what the goal here was, to bring it up to the same standard as iOS and Android, and we did that with the reference IDs. So definitely a lot of work we put into web forms here in 2019, and more exciting stuff to come in 2020. So about last year this time, we were about at 15%, or maybe 10 or 15%, I think, from data I have, of our customers and you guys using web forms. So now we're at about 30%. So this is really definitely some great validation. I want like everyone to give themselves a round of applause for certainly using this. It's been really beneficial, and we can start seeing new ways of folks collecting data, not just on their mobile devices, but using it to collect data on the web.
So Ben, there's a question about web forms. Can web forms be used under a single user account, but can be accessible to more than one user without signing in?
Well, not without signing in. So web forms is going to work pretty much the same way as the iOS and Android device. You do have to have a named user. You do have to sign in to fill out the web form. I think what you're maybe asking about is a requested feature for web forms, which is a public link. That is something we are thinking about here. We have to, obviously get more support and try to research this some more. But the public link feature, if we do go forward with that, would allow something like that. But we need to think about how that impacts our user model.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So next I wanted to move on to our admin portal. On the admin portal, we've been hard at work, mostly working on the user management interface that I'm about to show here in just a minute. But we did work on some other things. One of those things was large Excel file download. Currently, when you download Excel files, if you use our older way to download Excel, if you have upwards of so many thousand records, it's going to time out and say filter your data and then download it. This was one of the most common requests that folks had. So using or implementing custom Excel allows that limit to not happen. So basically what you do is when you click the download button, it's going to not time out. It's going to email you the file when it's done processing. So it is going to take a little time for that to happen, but you are going to get the full file there. So if you haven't used that, I recommend reaching out to us if you haven't turned it on and giving that a shot. We have been hard at work with Zapier as well. So we did, shut off our old API, our 5.1 API. Sorry, not shut off, but we are unsupporting our 5.1 API. So with that, we need to change Zapier because it ran on our 5.1 API. So we are updating Zapier here. We should have some updates here in 2020, but it is in beta here right now for folks to utilize using our new APIs. Additionally, on the API side, we have added a new API parameter for some of the development folks out there who are using our APIs day in and day out. For subform records specifically, you can specify a parameter that lets you switch the order in which subform records are returned via the API. So the one order would be in the order they were collected, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you could reverse the order and it could be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there's a new parameter for that we've added, and we expect new APIs and parameters as well in 2020. So now I wanted to just give a quick intro to user management, and then I'm going to hop over on and do a live demo here quickly. So our user management application is something we've been working really hard on. This has been one of the most most common requests that we've had. It really stemmed from I want a user that can specifically do this exact function, and to do this function, maybe it was assign records or view data only for this form and be able to delete data for this form, but not for this form. So these are getting into some more granular permissions that currently you have to give the user company admin or server admin rights to do all this, but that's obviously too much rights to give folks. So we are really working on a way to have really granular permissions and be able to specify things like I was saying, user that can only do this or user that can only do that. So we put together a community post there. We encourage everyone to check it out and follow the progress of it. But I'm going to hop into our demo here quickly. But before I do, are there any questions before I hop into that?
Not yet, Ben.
Okay. So what we have here, this is our current iFormBuilder admin portal. I'm just going to refresh to make sure it didn't log me out. And once I'm logged in here, I can hover over users. This is where we're going to add this at. So this is actually replacing the users and the user group section. So under users, I'm going to see a user management button here. So once I click on that, it's going to open our user management application, and it's going to be loading all the different users in my account and what this interface is going to look like. So again, this is something that's still in progress. So we are still working on the header. So that's not exactly where we want to have it now, but most of the stuff in here is certainly coming to fruition. So by default, it's going to load all your different users down in here. You're able to search and sort and filter for any users you're looking for here. On the left-hand side, we're going to have your user limit for your account. Let's say you have 1,000 users or 50 users, you would see that here. How many current users you have, how many active users you have here. Additionally, it's going to show the number of user groups you have and different policies, which I'll go over in just a minute. So up here at the top, we have a summary. We have a user group section that I'll go to here quickly, and we can see all of our user groups. Again, this is a test environment, so you see some dummy groups here. But if I would select on a group, it's going to filter and show only users in that group. So this is definitely more accessible than before. Before you had to go to the own user group section, select the user group just to view these users. So you can simply swap back and forth between different groups and see what users are in them. Over here, you're going to see a policies section. So for the initial rollout of this, we're only going to have the same policies that you have today, right? So there's a company admin policy or permission, a form builder policy, and a data collector policy. So I'm able to do the same thing here as I did with groups. I can filter and see, show me company admins or show me only data collectors. Right now, there's only 71 data collectors, but there is 3 form builders in here. So you're easily able to filter this here. We do want to look at adding more policies in the future, in future phases, such as the right to assign records only or the right to only manage users and things like that. So that's something that's definitely coming up here at some point. So I just wanted to go through quickly a create user process to show how this works. So you press this plus button. We did some fancy stuff with the screen here, but basically you can go ahead and you can create a user, you can create a user group, or you can add a user to a group. So in this case, I'm just going to create a user, and I'm going to give this webinar 2020 Ben. I'm going to give it a username, an email, and a password. Let me make sure I type that in correctly. And typically you'd go ahead and then you'd pick your policies and you'd be done in our current interface. But we actually allow you to select one-to-many policies and then select groups as well. So we're going to click next here and click assign policies. And now I'm going to be able to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
When you look at these different policies, there was a question that came in. You had mentioned the term policy and you'd mentioned permissions. What is the difference between policy and permissions?
Yeah, so basically each one of these is going to be a permission or a policy. I use them interchangeably. So basically they mean the same thing for this discussion. So sorry about the confusion there.
And I think what we want to have everyone keep in mind is for the future, permissions are smaller pieces. So each of these policies is made up of multiple permissions. So permission to log in and manage users, permission to go in and export the data. Those two are different types of permissions that can be combined into a different policy.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we're going to break these down, right, when we make custom policies and things in the future. So for here, I'm just going to collect. I'm going to say this person is a data collector and a company admin, and then I'm going to move on to my next step of assigning groups. So before you had to create the user, then go to the group, and then add them to the group. This we're actually making this all in one step. I could simply skip this step if I didn't want to add them to the group, but I'm going to add them to the group here now. Add them to my group 1 and hit review. Now at this point, I can see all the details that I'm going to do. I'm going to create this user with this email, first name and last name, put them in this group, and they're going to have these policies. So this is a nice little review just to make sure, kind of a double check before we go ahead and do all this. So once I hit create, what it's going to do is create the user and assign them to those groups, and it should increment my user now from 104 users to 105 users. So this is really what we have in store here. There's a couple things I didn't show, which we'll go over in previous webinars and following webinars and things. But this is really where we're at with this, and we're excited to get people to start using it here in 2020. So afterwards, we are going to send out in the follow-up email a way to opt in and for more information on this. So we'll be putting messages out, but if you'd like to get possibly some early access or start discussing ways to start using this, we'd like to keep a list of folks who are interested, and we'll make that happen.
And Ben, I just want to add, because this question did come in about who this page is available to. This is actually going to replace our current user management page, so this will be available to all iFormBuilder customers once it's released.
Yep, absolutely. So let's hop back to our presentation here, and we can move on to what we're working on. I believe we have a poll here coming up next.
Yep, Ben, I've gone ahead and I've put the poll out there. So if everyone could take some time and put in your response with what features you're most excited about that we released in 2019. You can choose more than one feature in here, so put all the ones that you like. We'll just give everyone another minute or so to put in their responses. All right, so with that, Ben, I'm going to close the poll and I'm going to share those results. You can see that there are definitely some features that are pretty high on everyone's list, and that's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Lookup element and form properties, great to see. They all look like they got pretty even distribution. So good to know. All right, so I wanted to next step into what we're working on here in 2020. We've done a lot of planning over the last few months, and it obviously just continues to roll in from 2019 into 2020. And first, I wanted to just chat quickly about our user management functionality. I just demonstrated that, but I want to outline a little bit more about what is in the different phases that we're working on. So similar to how we released WEBFORMS back in 2018, we introduced it in phases. We're going to do the same thing here with the user management. So first, in phase 1, we're really going to be moving users from the old interface to the new interface. You're going to have the same user roles and permissions as you've had before, and we are going to be also moving the licenses section and the user group section from there. So that's going to be pretty beneficial there. You're going to see that new interface kind of across the board for those couple sections. And we are going to be introducing an all new header that should make things from forms, data, users, all those different header options we have easier to find and scale as we add more functionality. And then for phase 2 is really where the pieces I was talking about, where we can add these custom policies, such as I want a user who can only manage users, or a user who can only assign forms, or a variety of other features and functionalities. So that's something we're definitely working on. We do want to build our own custom policy builder, so you can go in and actually select the stuff you want, right? I want to do this, and the other thing, and then make your own policy. This will really allow, I think, more people to start utilizing the application because they're not afraid of giving them too much or too little permissions. And then for some of our enterprise groups who are using a single sign-on, we actually are going to support that as well in phase 2 is our plan. So then those folks can migrate to the system as well. So unfortunately for phase 1, any folks who are using SSO will not be able to use that, but later on down the line in phase 2 and so on, that will be available. So that's really our our immediate plan with the user management, and we're really excited to get this out and have folks start using it. So stay tuned for that email coming afterwards, and opt in for that. On the mobile side, there's a number of community feature requests. I mean, every year we pick a couple feature requests and we do from the community, and this year is going to be just like those others in terms of what we're working on. So there's 2 core things from the community side that that have really gotten some push. Which first is inline editing of text and number fields. So currently in our text element and number elements, and believe it or not, a number element is the most used element, at least on the iOS side. And what that means is every time you click a text field, it moves over to a new screen, you type in your text, and you hit done. Now, at that point, what that does is, it takes 3 clicks to do that. So the inline editing actually is going to behave in a way similar to WebForms, where you see the element on the screen, you tap on that element, and the keyboard just pops up. It doesn't move you to a new screen. So you can type in whatever you want and hit done. That's going to save some time out in the field there. You're going to be able to see other things, other things changing on the screen as you type in stuff. That will happen for the text and the number field. It's been definitely one of the highly voted features in the community there. Another one we have is our drawing element updates. So our drawing element, as you see on the right-hand side here, it has a decent amount of functionality, but there are some improvements that people are looking for. First one here is they want to preload. People want to be able to preload the drawing element with something. So maybe that is a picture or an outline of the human body in the healthcare space, and you can outline the areas that are injured. Or maybe it's a picture of a house or a picture of a machine, and you want to outline areas that are damaged. And we're going to let you preload the drawing element with something. It could be an image such as this, or it could be be anything else. Additionally, we want to support different custom icons. So currently, if you click the option I believe down here, we show 5 or 10 different icons we support. Folks want to be able to have their own custom icons. Maybe if you have a picture of a map, you want to drop some pinpoints on it. So you'd want to upload your own custom icon in there. So similar to the way we uploaded icons for form icon that you saw earlier in the presentation, we want to do that for the drawing element as well. So those are 2 of the big community requests. There's been some other things. Some of these are community. Some of these are things we've got from working with customers on the usability side of things. Our big item here we're working on is our new settings and account screen. So here's a quick preview. Our development team is working hard over the holidays to get some preview out for testing now. But basically, when you hit the gear icon on the top left, it's going to take you to a screen like this, where it's going to have details about your account, more iForm advanced settings. And the main benefit here is really we're going to standardize this across iOS and Android. So if you are using if you're on a mixed device environment, it may be confusing when you make documentation because for Android you have to do this, for iOS you have to do this. And we want to make these behave and feel very, very similar on here. We also have different support and troubleshooting details, Bluetooth devices, and legal and other mumbo jumbo down there. So that's really where we're looking at with this, and this will be one of the big, we think, usability improvements to the application here as well. We do want to incorporate with this as well a notification center. We've had a number of requests from clients to be able to better communicate with their teams out in the field through the application. Our current notification, you send it and it stays and shows one time. You hit OK and it's gone forever. So we want to have it more of a persistent notification. So when records are assigned or notification messages sent out, it does show like maybe a little bell here or something in the top right. We still need to work through more of the design on here, but we want to show that notification until you choose to clear it, or in the assigned record case, you complete the assigned record that was sent to you. So we definitely, like some more feedback on these. We're going to be putting details out in the community, reaching out to folks directly for feedback on this, and we're really excited to release some of this. On the Android side, we are working on updating our localization. So our current localizations are, a little bit outdated on there on Android. We don't support every single language, so we are working on that. You should see something here probably end of Q1, early Q2, with our localization updated to support all the languages. Some spots that are not localized, we will localize then. So that's something big we're working on. One of the longstanding initiatives we've had is we really want to upgrade our current sync. Our current sync does have some existing limitations with the amount of data that can be uploaded per record. It is using some older syncing technology, so we want to make that faster and better. So we are going to be upgrading our sync to utilizing API here in 2020, and that's really going to be the framework for things like one of the highly requested community updates of rapid fire photos. So once we have our upgraded sync in, then we can capture many photos per form and upload that as well. So that's something we're excited about. We started it in 2019 and we're still continuing that. You may have seen under some API settings ways to turn that stuff on and off. So we'll shed some more light on those details here coming up. And the last thing I want to talk about quickly is our SDK. In 2020, we do want to roll out an SDK for iOS and Android that's going to allow folks to incorporate different forms into their application. So if you are a developer and you develop either mobile apps, we want to really definitely talk to you and see kind of how we can make this a reality and make this work. If you have some existing mobile apps or you want to build some custom software experiences for folks, let's certainly talk and see see how you can utilize the SDK we're working on. Any questions so far, Barrett, before we move on to WebForms?
There was a question about having the ability to do the inline editing with a subform. So I'm not sure if that's something that's been discussed at all, having like a table in there with the subform questions and then doing the inline editing.
It has a little bit. I mean, we've had a request from a customer to implement something like that in the past. So let's definitely talk and see if your needs are similar to what theirs are, and maybe we can look at doing something like that. But yeah, we'd definitely like to understand that more, and we'll follow up after.
Great, that's it for now.
Okay. So just a couple more things here, and then we'll be wrapping up. So on the WebForm side, we have two core initiatives we really want to do in the first part of 2020. The first one here is our lookup element. We added it on iOS and Android, as I said, one of the the latest element that we've added, and it's not on WebForms yet, so we want to add that to WebForms. All the same functionality you see. We need to work on the interface and design a little bit more. But we really want to bring that to life as well. Also on the branding side, we want to make sure we can brand this application just like you have the rest of your application. Currently, it is all just green on here. We're not pulling any details from the company info, so we want to make this be branded similar to your iOS and Android devices are. So that would be this header here and the submit and done buttons at the bottom. They are green as well, and we want to make those match the base colors that you're utilizing. On the iFormBuilder server side, as I talked about earlier, we were doing the user management. That's definitely a big piece of what we're working on in 2020. One of the other largest community feature requests we have outstanding now is to update our CSV upload. So our CSV upload, as you can see by this screenshot, is a little outdated. It works well, but it has some current limitations, such as a 800 KB file size, and it doesn't allow field mapping and things like that. So what we want to do here in 2020 is revamp our CSV upload to allow folks to upload much larger files. And one of the core pieces of that is allow people to upload to existing data. So let's say you have some data on the server that you've made some changes to on your local environment, and you want to update that record on the server. Currently, you have to delete all that data on the server and then upload it again through CSV. In this new flow, we want to allow folks to as if the record ID matches, we'll update all the data that they would like to have updated there. So that's something, you know, definitely big we're working on. Additionally, we want to allow people to map fields. Right now it's kind of a pain because you have to map the column name has to match exactly what you have on iFormBuilder. But in this case, we would let you map, you know, field A, and it could map to, you know, my first name in iFormBuilder. So that would allow, you know, definitely, you know, for the data to be uploaded and be a little easier to configure. We also want to handle errors a little better too. We don't really handle errors until we try to upload everything, and then we tell you that something failed. So you know, there's a number of things we want to work on there. We would love to hear more from the community and folks on what they'd be looking at from a new CSV upload feature. On the API end, we are going to be adding some new endpoints as well for some of the development folks out there. These will be specifically for user management, so things like creating a group, creating a policy, creating a user, and things like that. And with that, we want to also make our API faster. So currently, you know, our API is as fast as it is, but we want to improve that. So, you know, return times are much faster. That goes into updating some of our backend databases, and our infrastructure team has been hard at work at that already, trying to figure out how we can do all that. Additionally, with that, we want to provide some better error messaging. This would really, you know, right now when you get error messages, it basically says something like, you know, this is invalid, or you know, truncated server, or things like that. So some of those, you know, are not very clear on what actually failed. So you know, we want to actually mention that, you know, if something failed, we want to tell you what failed and kind of why it failed there, along with updating our status codes with relevant information. So really excited about that from anyone, you know, who's developing. You know, stay tuned for those updates. We'll be sharing that detail as you know, as that makes its way out there. Additionally, we do have a PHP and an Angular SDK for the iFormBuilder API. We're going to be rolling out as well. So stay tuned for that. Those folks who want to build, you know, different custom applications, you know, you can utilize our SDK for that to make your development, you know, give it kind of a jump start instead of having to write all the code from scratch. So I think we wanted to move into a poll here, and I think we're actually towards the end. So.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch our poll. Based off of what Ben just shared with everyone, we're wondering what future 2020 plans you're most excited about. That's the features. I guess I missed a word when I typed in that poll. So please let us know. All right, it looks like there's a lot of you are putting in your responses. That's great. And it actually looks like it's getting pretty even across the board. So that's good to know that we are focused on the right updates within the platform and going in the right direction. So with that, I'm going to close this poll. And we're going to just talk through the end of the webinar. So as you guys are aware, a lot of what we do is based off of what we hear back from the customers. So we ask that you please become an active member of our community. If you haven't logged into our Customer Success Center, we urge you to create a username there. You can go in and you can submit tickets when you have questions or running into issues, as well as join our community where you can upvote certain features that you want to see a part of the platform. This is where we get a lot of our ideas. As Ben mentioned, there were those community feature requests, and now those things are going into the platform. So let your voice be heard and join our community. We also urge you to follow our release notes. So every time we have a release, whether it's an app, a server, or WebForm releases, if you are following those release notes, you will receive an email notification letting you know when those releases are happening and what they are. So that way you're always in the loop. Lastly, we urge you to subscribe to our newsletters or our emails. We don't try to bombard you with emails, but we do want to make sure that you are informed. So please stay subscribed to those. And with that, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us for today's webinar. I also want to thank Ben for presenting and taking the time to share with everyone all these features that we've added this last year, as well as what we're planning on adding next year. So with that, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll stick around for another few minutes, but thank you guys. And in the next 24 hours, you will receive an email with the recording as well as the presentation and some helpful links. So thank you, and we'll talk to you later.